Good morning, kids. This will be our Module 6, your gas exchange and circulation in our biology class. Gas exchange and circulation, like their need for food, animals need to take in oxygen and give off carbon dioxide. In order to sustain life, if oxygen is not taken in and adenosine triphosphate or ATP, which supplies energy to the body, may not be produced because without oxygen, you cannot produce ATP. If carbon dioxide is not given off, cells will suffocate, convulse, and eventually die. Muna kada if intake ng oxygen, you release carbon dioxide because if hindi mo pag-use carbon dioxide, mapatay ang immune cells, therefore leading to your death. The journey of these gases to and from the different parts of the body is a function of two systems, your respiratory and circulatory system. The respiratory system is concerned with the exchange of your gases, while the circulatory system is concerned with the transport of these gases to and from the exchange centers. So kids, in short, your respiratory and circulatory systems are those systems that provide you with gases, like your oxygen, in order for you to keep on living. Your circulatory system is the system that provides this provides this provides this platform in which your gases are absorbed into your body. Where respiratory system is the one responsible for the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide from and to the cells. First, the gas exchange and among animals. First, respiration is the exchange of gases between organisms and the environment. It includes external, internal, and cellular respiration. First, your external respiration involves the exchange of gases between your blood and lungs. Kaya again, ang blood natin, one of the functions ng ating dugo, kids, is to carry oxygen to the heart where it pumps. It is the simply taking from oxygen from the air and returning carbon dioxide to it. Okay, again, once we inhale air like your oxygen, we exhale carbon dioxide. Diba? Common sense. Internal respiration, on the other hand, refers to the exchange of gases between your blood and tissues. Again, ang blood naton, kabit-bit, isang oxygen sa ating heart and into our tissues. Ng purpose ng ating dugo. Cellular respiration naman is a chemical process by which cell breaks down glucose to release energy using oxygen. So the functions of the respiratory system include the following. First, your ventilation is the mechanical process that moves air and in and out in the lungs. Since air in the lungs has a higher oxygen concentration than blood, oxygen diffuses from air to blood. Carbon dioxide moves from blood to the air within the lungs by diffusing down its concentration gradient. So ventilation, in a sense, is breathing. Pag ginawa natin. Next, you have your gas exchange. Ang number 2 na function ng respiratory system occurs between the blood and other tissues in the body. Occur ang gas exchange sa ato na blood naman niya and gakadto sa iba natin na tissues, that is gas exchange. While a ventilation is the inhalation and exhalation naton or paginawa natin. Next, your oxygen utilization naman is when tissues in the energy liberating reaction of cell respiration naman is oxygen utilization, how you use your oxygen inside your body. So the three functions of your respiratory system again is for ventilation, pag ginhawa natin, gas exchange, and for oxygen utilization. So the structure of your respiratory system, respiratory tract, where external respiration occurs, starts at the nose and mouth and ends in the lungs. Direkta check yo. You have your gahalin sa nose, kadto sa aton nga mouth, and then into our lungs. Kita mo iyang pathway from our nostrils or from our mouth, kasi siya sa larynx, into our trachea, and lastly, into our lungs. Ito yung left and right side. It has your bronchi, your lungs, your diaphragm. Naman siya din ang responsible for us to pump blood. Kung desirado, bala ang inyong pathway sa inyong heart, ang inyong breathing, mas nagalesen kay gamay lang ginapasulod mo sa air pathways mo kay ginablock sa mo blood vessels. Importante gina mismo, kids, nga pero may healthy ang imong dugo for you to breathe para mabuhay ka. So next, ano ni purpose nila? From first, your nose. Ngayon nga, function is to warms, moistens, and filters inhaled air as it is conducted to the pharynx. Again, gina-filter sa aton nose kung anong gasulod na. So, ang aton kids nga mga foreign substances matapit lang sa aton ilong. Ang gadugay, kaya hindi siya pwede magsulod sa aton lawas. So, that is the function of our nose. It serves as our protection. It warms, moistens, and filters inhaled air as it is conducted to the pharynx. So, gano'n sa aton air, nag-obra lang sila. Ang mga higkok nga na, mga foreign substances, gobra lang sila nga, pungit, di ba? Sa aton nga nose. Kaya katipon sila kag nag-form into more bigger solid substances. Next, we have your pharynx. Function niya, common passageway of food into the esophagus, air into the larynx, meaning passageway sa aton food, ang pharynx naton, from our esophagus and air into the larynx. Next, we have your larynx na naman, kids. It prevents the food and fluid from entering the trachea and lungs during swallowing. Permits passage of air while breathing and prevents foreign materials from entering the trachea and produces sounds. Again, pag filter sa aton nose, hindi siya maubos tanan. Larynx is the next nga black way. Next, you have your trachea. Serves as passageway for air and cleanses the air, meaning nakinuan niya ang nagasulod nga hangin na gid sa aton. After pagwa sa foreign substances from your larynx and nose, ang air na gina-filter na gid mismo ang air para nagtindo. Pareho man sa aton bronchi, it is also a passageway for our air and cleanses the air also like your trachea. And lastly, your lungs contains bronchi and bronchioles and alveoli and pulmonary vessels surrounded by pleurae inside of gaseous exchange. So that are the purpose of your different organs for respiratory system. Next, you have your mechanics. Paano tayo ginhawa? Mechanics of your respiration. The respiratory system may also be divided into two conducting divisions and the respiratory division. The former includes all of the cavities and structures and that transports gases to the respiratory division, while the latter are those involved in the gas exchange between your air and blood. So the first step in your mechanics of respiration, first step is your breathing or ang atong pagginawa. This consists of taking air into the lungs or inspiration and expelling air from the lungs. During inspiration, the diaphragm contracts and flattens and the rib rise, increasing the volume of the chest cavity to allow inwards rush of air, meaning inhale more oxygen. At the end of an expiration naman, kids, the diaphragm, our respiratory muscles are relaxed. It takes a dome shape and the ribs fall, reducing the volume of the chest cavity, expelling air. Once you inhale air, kids, you are inhaling, ano kasi air? Ang aton nga oxygen. While kung magbuga naman tas ang air, kids, you are producing what? Is it oxygen? No, it is not oxygen. It is carbon dioxide. Ba? Common sense, kids. Salin sa elementary nga sa aton. Air is warmed and cleared as it passes through the nasal passages and into the lungs. The trachea, or your windpipe, is comprised of your stout cartilaginous rings that divide into two bronchi. At the top of the trachea is the larynx, which contains your vocal cords. The trachea extends from the neck into the thorax, where it divides into the right and left main bronchi, which enters the right and left lungs, breaking up into smaller bronchi and bronchioles, and ending in small air sacs or alveoli, where gaseous exchange occurs. The lungs are divided first into right and the left being smaller, ang wala nyo bala, mas smaller siya to accommodate the heart. Kaya, diba? Check the kids what's ato na picture sa ato na organ. Sa left naton may heart ya. Sa right wala. So in order for your heart to for your left na lang to accommodate more mo na siya din pagamay siya kaysa sa imo right. Kay ang aton gani nga left, kids, may ara sang aton na location sang atong heart. So don't mistake it. Kung yung heart naton again, it is located in your left lungs. Waking up into small bronchi and bronchioles and ending in small air sacs where gaseous exchange. The lungs are divided to your right and left. Mas dako si right gani due to it not having your heart and your left being smaller to accommodate the heart. Na mas gamay ang imo nga kids. Ang imo nga pathway and inyong trachea para accommodates sa imong heart. Then, into the lobes, 3 on the right and supplied by your bronchi. Mas gamay sila, again, kaysa kay right to accommodate your heart. The respiratory tract. From your nasal cavities, the smallest bronchi is lined by a layer of sticky mucus secreted by your epithelium, which hit the sidewall of the tract and are trapped in this mucus. This is encouraged by the airstream changing direction as it is repeatedly does a continually dividing tube and random Brownian movement of small particles suspended in the airstream. So kids, ano pala tandaan niyo sa first nga mechanic of respiration? In your breathing, ano na yung pala tandaan? Because your breathing, kids, is the inspiration and expiration of your exchanging of gases. And inspiration, ano ka, naga-expel, ano ka, kids? Nagakasulod ka sang air into your body and you're expelling air from the lungs. And your expiration na naman, kids, the diaphragm and other respiratory muscles are relaxed, meaning ginapagwa mo naman si air that is in your breathing. Next nga pala tandaan natin, kids. Ang pala tandaan na natin, kids, your trachea is your windpipe and mas gamay si aton nga left kaysa kay right nga lung. Why? Because your left side sa imong lungs accommodates your heart. Therefore, to accommodate your heart, mas gamay ang aton nga kids, your bronchi and your bronchioles, ang iyang pathway from your halin sa trachea, mas gamay sa left nga lang kaysa kay right nga lang. Muna siya, kids, nga man. Mas gamay sa left kay right nga pathway. Kaya may accommodation sa heart. Next, you have your external respiration. Naman, first mo is breathing. Ito pala tandaan. Next, you have your external respiration. This takes place in the lungs naman as carbon dioxide leaves the blood, diffusing into the alveoli and oxygen enters the blood from the alveoli. Gaseous exchange relies on simple diffusion. In order to provide sufficient oxygen to get rid of sufficient carbon dioxide, there must be a larger surface area for gaseous exchange. A very short diffusion path between alveolar air and blood, concentrating gradients for oxygen and carbon dioxide between your alveolar air and blood. Carbon dioxide moves down a pressure gradient diffusing from the blood in capillaries surrounding the alveoli air in the alveoli. Oxygen also moves down a pressure gradient diffusing from the alveolar air to the blood in the capillaries surrounding your alveoli. Carbon dioxide is carried in the fluid portion of the blood as bicarbonate ions, while oxygen is carried within the red blood cells by hemoglobin. And next, you have your internal respiration. Oxygenated blood finds its way to the heart, to the alveolar air sacs of blood. In the process, carbon dioxide moves down to your pressure gradient, diffusing from the tissue fluid surrounding the body cells to the blood. Oxygen moves down a pressure gradient, diffusing from the blood within the capillary fluid, the pathway of blood carrying their gases is further detailed in your circulation. So kids, again, the three mechanics of our respiration, your breathing, your external respiration, and your internal respiration. Di nag-take place inspiration and expiration in your breathing. External respiration, carbon dioxide action, and where it is diffused from simple diffusion kag para makapasulod ka sa oxygen. Meaning gina, exhale mo di si carbon dioxide sa external. Keynote external, meaning kapag ka, external respiration. And in your internal respiration, diri mo na ginapasulod si oxygen. So that is the mechanic of our respiration. So gets in, kids, ha? Next, your gas exchange naman in terrestrial plants. Mag-plants naman ka mo, naman siya, kids. The leaf, because this is a large surface, is an organ that functions not only for food making but also for gaseous exchange. Leaves usually have large surface areas. Before we discuss this, before kong magamuhan, kids naman may gaseous exchange ang plants because your plants, your trees, for example, and your plants, they provide they provide you oxygen. Diba? Sa ato na high school, sa ato nga plants natin sila nga provides oxygen. Therefore, kilang nantanay sa earth ang ato nga plants like the trees because they provide oxygen. Kung wala oxygen, mapatay ta, tama? But what do they need in return? Your carbon dioxide. So, it is commensalism in a sense. Kaya gahatag kita sa carbon dioxide para sila gahatag oxygen para sa aton. So try to examine the cross-section of a leaf. You will find four layers: the upper epidermis, the palisade, the spongy layer, and the lower epidermis. The upper epidermis usually consists of a simple layer of cells that cover the entire leaf in the surface. It functions to protect the inner layer of cells from drying out from a mechanical destruction or energy, meaning protection sa ang imong upper epidermis. The epidermal cells are usually covered by a waxy substance or cuticle called cutin. It has numerous hair cells, some of which excrete ethereal oils which makes the leaves sticky. The palisade layer naman is composed of parenchyma cells which contain chloroplasts to carry on photosynthesis, while the spongy layer contains cells which are loosely arranged. Thus, there are numerous large intercellular space between cells, gases which enter through the stomata and move freely into the intercellular space, then move into the cell membranes of the different cells through the diffusion phase. The vascular bands, such as your xylem and phloem, are located in this layer. The xylem vessels are responsible for conducting water and dissolved minerals upward, whereas the phloem transfers food to all plants. Just like the palisade layer, the spongy layer is also composed of parenchyma cells containing chloroplasts to carry on the photosynthesis. These two layers and palisade spongy layers make up the mesopyle or the middle layer of the leaf. So, kids, ang imong gas exchange. So, kids, no need to study the gas exchange in your terrestrial plants, ha? In-discuss ko lang ni in order for you to know. Okay? Discuss ko lang ni, no need to study. Okay, hindi mo na puslan. Basta balaan nyo lang kung ano ang mechanism for respiration sa aton, kung paano siya transfer kag anong yung purpose in us in humans. That is enough. Kaya again, hindi naman mapuslan ang yaka plants kay komsay ka mo. Next, we have your circulation. The cells of the body needs continuous supply of gases and nutrients and the regular elimination of waste materials. In single-celled animals, these materials enter and leave the cell by simple diffusion. In multicellular organisms, diffusion is not enough to supply the needed materials or to get rid of waste materials. Thus, there is need for an internal transport and a circulatory system. So this is where your circulation comes in. Okay, again, you need circulation from and through your gas exchange, inhalation, and exhalation. There are two main types of circulatory systems, your open and closed types. In an open circulatory system, blood is pumped from the heart, passing through your blood vessels into tissues with an open space called your, your hemicole. Blood is returned to the heart through these spaces into openings in the heart in arthropods or through an open vessel leading to the gills on mollusks. In the closed circulatory system, blood is pumped and received through the heart to a continuous circuit of blood vessels. In the tissues, the blood vessels are very thin, thus allowing diffusion of nutrients, gases, waste materials between the blood and extracellular fluids. This is present in annelids, some mollusks, echinoderms, and all vertebrates. So, mas ginagamit si closed kaysa kay open na types. Okay, mas damo sila sa organisms. Hindi, sorry kids, liwat. Mas ginagamit si open type kaysa kay closed circulatory na system. Kaya mas damo kita kaysa sila. Pero kung pasihan mo sa microorganisms, mas ginagamit si closed circulatory system. Invertebrates, from fishes, frogs, reptiles, birds, and mammals, the circulatory are basically similar. The circulatory system is typically composed of the heart, the pumping organ, the blood, the circulatory fluid, the connective tissue composed of cells, and the fluid and vessels or spaces through which blood and lymph circulate. So, the human circulatory system. So, kids, no need magtanda. Kids, basta tandaan lang two types, the open and closed types of your circulatory system. So, ari kids, diri na ka mo ma-focus sa circulatory system yun. The human circulatory system. Why? Because malay nyo sa ulihin, magamit yun kung magmasakit ka mo. May problema ka mo sa heart, at least may more ka mga ideas kung paano mo siya. So, diri gid ko ma-explain kids ang mayo. So, maayo gid nga mapuslan nyo. Your human circulatory system. Humans, just like other vertebrates, have a closed circulatory system. The system is composed of our heart, blood vessels, blood, lymph vessels, and associated are such as your thymus, spleen, and liver. The main function of the human circulatory system are 1. to transport gases, nutrients, and waste materials, hormones, enzymes, gases, and heat within the body. Meaning transport na siya sang tanan yung nga needs. Whether it is heat, your nutrients, your waste materials, your hormones, or your gases. Number 2, to assist in the maintenance of your fluid balance. Para primi ka, hydrated. If not enough ang mga fluid consumption, ibalansihan niya na para mabuhay ka for pila ka days. So, muna po sa circulatory system. Number 3, to prevent loss of blood within the blood vessels by the process called clotting. Magkambaga mo kids, clotting. What is clotting, kids? Siya ang pagpatay kapag maging solid na ang inyong blood. So, your circulatory system prevents the clotting of your blood. Again, ang clotting, kids, pagpatay kag paging solid forms ng inyong blood. Kumbaga, pagmalaya. Next, number 4, to help fight infections or invasions of the heart. Of the invasion of the body by microorganisms. Again, ang circulatory system natin nagabulig man to fight infections or invasions of the body by microorganisms such as your bacteria. Next, you have your heart. Kids, the heart is about the size of a person's clenched fist, ang atong ginumol, and weight less than a pound. It is located in the chest cavity behind the breastbone, slightly to the left there. Siya nakabutang. Yan, so wala naton kids nga part sa aton nga chest that is where your heart is located. The heart is composed of a bundle of cardiac muscles. Diba? Discuss na to sa inyo nga final nga module sang midterms. Your module 4, gin-discuss na tong cardiac muscles nyo. Cardiac muscles nyo, ganiya purpose to what? The purpose of your cardiac muscle is in order for your heart to keep on beating. Siyang responsible kid nga muscle. Kung sa muscle lang yung istoryahan, ha? Your cardiac muscle. Specialized for the rhythmic contraction ni kids, paghulag and relaxation known as your heartbeat. Next, the inside of the heart is divided into 4 chambers. The anterior chamber, which is the atria, ng mga anterior chambers. Kids, again, ang mga dalom yan, kids, like your atria kang tanan, hindi mo magawapos lang, pero good to know, kids. Ha? The atria are the receiving chambers, while the posterior ones and the ventricles are pumping chambers. Again, ang gabaton, si atria, ang gapump, si ventricles. The ventricles have thicker walls than the atria. Mas thicker ang walls ni ventricles. The atrium naman and the ventricle are separated into the right and left parts by a thick wall of muscle called your intra-atrial septum and your interventricular septum respectively. So, what are the 4 chambers? Again, atria, which is our receiving chamber. Ang ato naman, kids, nga pumping chamber is our ventricles, and ang yung thick wall of muscles, kids, is your inter-atrial septum and your interventricular septum. So those are the 4 chambers of your heart. Okay? Next, the atria are separated from the ventricles by valves to prevent the backflow of blood, meaning hindi siya mag-counter-regulate. The valve between the right atrium and right ventricle is the tricuspid valve. Between the left atrium and the left ventricle is the bicuspid valve and the mitral valve. The semiluminar valves also guard the exit of the heart, and the aortic valve between the left ventricle and the aorta. The pulmonary valve between the right ventricle and pulmonary artery. So kids, discuss ko lang sila, kids, ang medyo madam like your semilunar valves, but don't worry, kids, hindi ka mo pagpabudla yan. Ang akong lang gid mo ko tanong for your test and your exams is ano ang purpose ni heart? Ano purpose ang atod na blood? Mga simple terms lang gid na which kilangnan nyo gid balanon kay di ba dapat kilangnan na isulod sa aton common sense. So again, kung anong pinakasimple kag mapuslan nyo ang muna siya itudlo ko just like in your midterms, okay? Valves deformities may result from certain diseases like your rheumatic heart or your syphilis. Rheumatic heart natin, kids, is kung ginagambay kong rheumatic heart, gagamay ang pathway kag ang blood vessels mo nga nagakadto sa imo heart, meaning lower ang imo supply sang oxygen. Why? Because ang rheumatic heart natin, kids, gaka-infect na ang aton nga dugo sang bacterias. Okay, like your Staphylococcus aureus and Streptococcus nga bacteria. So, muna siya, kids. So, pero don't worry, kids. Gina-explain ko lang ang mga muna nga bacteria, pero hindi nyo kailangan patandaan, ha? Your syphilis or it may be present at birth. Congenital. This results in inflammation or scarring or thickening of the valves. Ang mga valves scarring, thickening or nipis man. Meaning narrow ang aton passageways. Narrowing sang passageways of blood. So kung mag-narrow ang inyong passageways of blood, mas damo or mas gamay ang kasulod nga blood? Mas gagamay. Kung mas gamay ang kasulod nga blood, sir, gano'n katabo? Hindi ka mo kaginhawa. Nabudlayan ka mo maginhawa. Utod inyo ginhawa. Therefore, budlay-budlay mga buhi. So, this is a picture of your heart. Okay? These are the parts of your heart. Check nyo lang the kids, ha? Hindi ka na pagpasaulo sa inyo. So, don't forget kumsay mo ka mo. So, you won't have any uses ng gawa. Basta balaan nyo na kung ano siya parts. Your pulmonary veins. Your right atrium, your right ventricle, your left ventricle, your apex, your descending aorta, your inferior vena cava, so on and so forth. So check nyo lang the kids, it is just good to know. But ang simple lang din mo ko sa inyo. Again, ha? Next, you have your heartbeat. The heart contracts or beats continues throughout an organism's lifetime. Each heartbeat or cardiac cycle has the following elements. Your systole, a contraction of the heart muscle, diastole, relaxation, mag-contract, systole, mag-relax, diastole. First, the atria contracts while the ventricle relaxes. Then the ventricles also contract while the auricles relax. Finally, all chambers relax. The contraction and ventricle pumps out of blood from the heart, meaning napagwa yung blood from the heart. The average duration of one cardiac cycle is 85 seconds with the event shown in table 3.3. As you can see, systole, pagpasulod, diastole, pagpagwa. Ang time nila, kids, ara man nakabutang ang iyang common usually nga duration sa imong nga cardiac cycle. Again, ang palatandaan to sa heartbeat is your cardiac cycle, which consists of your systole, the contraction of the heart muscle, and diastole, the relaxation of your heart muscle. So, mula na palatandaan, kids, tatlo lang ha? Next, you have your blood vessels, kids. Your blood vessels. Blood circles around the body through the three types of vessels, namely your arteries, capillaries, and veins. Again, kids, palatandaan niyo sila sa blood vessels, your arteries, capillaries, and veins. Why? Because diri ka mo, kids, nagaagi ang inyo dugo. Whether kuan ka man dugo, or ginapasudlan ka sang dugo, diri gid ang pathway sa arteries, capillaries, and veins. Okay, kung ginatustukan ka mo for your medical, diin siya sa vein naton. Ang arteries, diin na siya, pathway sa blood to your heart. Ang mga capillaries, also, ginapasudlan sang bulong. Meron pwede sa iba na functions, but these are the common types na dapat nyo balaan sa second puslan meaning. Okay? The arteries have thicker elastic walls due to the great pressure of blood passing through them. Veins, on the other, carry blood with low pressure, so the walls are thinner and are provided with valves which prevent the backflow of blood. Muscle contraction assists the flow of the blood through the veins. Arteries are veins that are joined together in the tissues through your capillaries. The smallest of the three vessels, ang capillary. So, major parts ko dyan, kung palatandaan nyo, ang pinagidyang kapuslan is your arteries and veins. And ang pinakagamay is your capillaries na nag-join together sa inyong tissues. Okay? So, kids, check yung function nila in this table 3.4. Your artery, again, as I said, carries oxygenated blood away from the heart. Amo na siya, kids, ang purpose ng ato na artery, meaning siya ni ang gakapot sa dugo. From away from the heart or gapasulod man. Next, vein carries unoxygenated blood to the heart. Ang artery restricts blood flow and goes away from the heart. Artery, vein naton carries unoxygenated blood to the heart. And capillaries connect arteries and veins for gases and nutrients exchanged between the blood and tissues. Pinakagamay again, capillaries. Mas manipis si vein, pinaka-thick si artery. Okay? Ano ang distinction niya? Tandaan nyo again, artery, vein, and capillaries. Ano ni sila, kids? These are your blood vessels responsible for the passageway of your blood. Ang iya nga pag-travel is from your arteries, capillaries, and veins. Okay? Next, you have your control of blood pressure. Blood pressure is the force exerted by the blood against the inner walls of your blood vessels. Blood pressure changes associated with your cardiac cycle. As you grow older, nagalain man yung blood pressure. Ang magsatagati-gulang kagahina. And they can be measured in the artery of the arm using an inflatable pressure cuff called your sphygmomanometer and a stethoscope. Sorry, nagpikla ko ha. Sphygmomanometer. Ang ginabumba-bumba na balakid sa kamot nyo kung magtanaw kung sa BP nyo. Sa mga nurse, tandaan nyo na. That is your sphygmomanometer. Manometer. Next, certain factors regulate your blood pressure. When blood pressure falls, sympathetic nerves stimulate blood vessels to constrict so that pressure rises again. So this can be illustrated when one gets up from bed each morning, changes position during the day. Amo na kids, bangon ka mo kisa. Kung may sudden rise ng blood pressure, galingin man ulit nyo. So baroreceptors in the walls of certain arteries and in the heart, which are sensitive to changes in blood pressure, also regulate your blood pressure. Again, your baroreceptors in the walls of certain arteries in the heart are sensitive to changes in blood. And they also, ang ato na baroreceptors, tandaan mo sa epic function, it also regulates our blood pressure. An increase in blood pressure stretches your baroreceptors and messages are sent to centers like your cardiac and vasomotor centers in the medulla of your brain. This center turns, stimulates, and parasympathetic nerves, which slows the heart and thus lowering your blood pressure. And these neural reflexes act continuously to maintain your blood pressure. Thirdly, hormones are also involved in the regulation of your blood pressure. Angiotensins are a group of hormones which constrict blood vessels, and these are formed from plasma proteins by the stimulation of an enzyme called renin. Renin is used by the kidneys in response to low blood pressure within the kidneys. And lastly, kidneys indirectly maintain your blood pressure by influencing blood volume through the regulation of rate at which water and salt are mixed. So kids, mag-control ka sa blood pressure, pala tandaan nyo the kids. Your blood pressure. Ano nga item ginagamit to measure your blood pressure? Sphygmomanometer and your stethoscope. Pala tandaan nyo sila, okay? Tatlo. Next, your baroreceptor kids. Tandaan nyo man because why? It is sensitive to blood pressure and regulates your blood pressure man. So, apat na pala tandaan to sa blood pressure. And lastly, ano pagit pala tandaan ta? Anong purpose ng kidney for blood pressure? It indirectly maintains blood pressure man, therefore dalaman si kidney. So, mula na kids, 5 lang pala tandaan ta sa blood pressure ha? Kung ano na nila mga purpose. Next, we have your blood. Guys, I won't go deep sa inyo sa blood kids, pero I'll explain kung ano ilang mga purpose para mag-gets nyo. Blood consists of a pale yellowish fluid, your plasma. Plasma kids is the pale yellowish fluid sa aton nga dugo. For example, kung gina-centrifuge, kinapatiyog-tiyog na siya, kids, nag-separate ang iyang red packed cells, kag iyang plasma or serum, and your plasma is that, ang yellowish nga fluid. Kaya ang yellowish nga fluid nga nag-separate sa mapula mo nga dugo, that is your plasma. And there are 3 kinds of blood cells or corpuscles. In humans, the total circulating blood volume is about 8% of the body weight. Thus, if a man weighs 60 kilograms, he has approximately 4.8 liters of blood. So, pakita ko sa inyo kids kung ano tsura sa plasma. Your plasma, kita niyo yung yellowish fluid nga gina-separate sa inyo dugo. That is plasma. Check niyo kids. Around yellowish fluid, that is your plasma. 1 part sa inyong mga blood. These are your red blood cells. Ang mapula di sa dalom. Whole blood na sila kids. Gin-combine mo sila kag wala mo sila na centrifuge. Okay? Ang yellow part is the plasma or serum. Either sila depende if may additives ka or wala. And the red part is your red blood cells, okay? Ang sa puti na sa tunga kids, good to know lang, that is a gel from your tube. Ang kuha sa tube to separate your plasma from your red blood cell, okay? Next, plasma is composed mostly of water, about 90 to 92% na tubig lang heads. The rest are plasma, protein, salts, nutrients, gases, hormones, and waste materials. The blood cells are the RBC or your erythrocytes, and your white blood cells or your leukocytes and platelets summarize the composition of blood and the function of each component. So your erythrocytes or your red blood cells, kids, are small, numerous, biconcave in shape, and without a nucleus. No need kids pagpasawluha ang niya nga shape, okay? Kaya hindi man kaya pag magamit. Basta balaan nyo, erythrocytes are another name for your red blood cells. Okay, purpose what sang ato na dugo to carry oxygen, di ba? An RBC possesses a nucleus in its early stage of development, but this later disappears, resulting in its short lifespan. Lifespan sa atong dugo, kids, as you remember sa high school, 120 days. The destruction of old RBCs takes place in the spleen and liver. Take note, di nagkakawasak atong RBC. Destruction niya occurs in the spleen and liver. The production of RBCs occur continuously in the bone marrow. Kung gawasak, din siya kato sa spleen kag liver kung ga-produce sa bone marrow. And it is under the control of erythropoietin, a growth factor. Ang erythropoietin naton is one of those growth factor. This factor is now a biotechnology product and can be useful in treating those suffering from your anemia. Ang anemia, kids, is a deficiency in hemoglobin accompanied by a decrease in the number of RBCs. Gabuhin ang imo nga hemoglobin sabay sa pag-decrease or pagbuhin man sa imong red blood cells. The RBC contains a pigment called your hemoglobin which combines with oxygen thereby transporting gases. Kung wala hemoglobin, kids, ang transport sa imong gases will not exist. Therefore, you need your hemoglobin and may ara kita tanan sina. So, ano pa tanan sa blood? Your blood consists of plasma, erythrocytes, and leukocytes and platelets. Okay? 4 parts. Again, your blood consists of plasma, erythrocytes, leukocytes, and platelets. 4 na ka-parts ng imong nga blood. Ang yellow nga part nga na, that is plasma. And ang mapulan di sa dalong, this is where your red blood cells are. Ang red blood cells naton consist of your platelets and your RBCs and araman sa dalom ang inyong na white blood cells. Ginabalan na sa kids nga white blood cells. Ano ganit purpose ng white blood cells naton? To fight off microorganisms and foreign nga mga microorganisms para mapatay sila. Do kumbaga sila ang tagapatay sa mga sakit sa aton. So this technically ng aton na leukocytes or our white blood cells is playing a huge part in our immune system. Okay? Next, after the kids sa aton na erythrocytes, na-discuss na sa erythrocytes na, we have your leukocytes or your white blood cells. They are fewer than the RBCs, but they are always nucleated, meaning may bilog sila and may pintok-pintok. Siya isang pa-explain, no need to go deeper, pero pakita ko lang sa inyo kung paano siya, kung ano tsura yun sa microscope kasi yung leukocytes or your white blood cells. There are different types, kids, ang inyong white blood cells and have different functions ang every type sa inyong white blood cells, but no need to go deeper kaya again ko. Sa ComSci, all you need to know is the basics. Kaya hindi naman magamit. Basta balaan nyo kung ano yung purpose ng tanan. Pero mangkot sa ulisin nyo, or if magtaas ang isa, balaan nyo kung ngaaga mo na kung ano ang sakit ang arada. For example, may deficiency ka sa hemoglobin, kag sa RBCs, therefore you have anemia. Ano brahon tak may anemia to kids? Mainom ta sang iron nga vitamins. Why? In order to promote production sang aton nga red blood cells. So kids, this is an example of your white blood cells under the microscope if ginastain sila. Kids, no need good to know lang para makita nyo kung ano tsura sa white blood cells. Nga may gambal kita nucleated siya, kids kay may pintok-pintok siya. Kita nyo na aside sa purple, sa tunga, may mga violet, those are its nucleations para mabalaan kids. Again, hindi siya white blood cells kung hindi siya nucleated. Okay? Hindi siya white blood cell, hindi siya nucleated. Meaning dapat may itom siya may darker violet na siya sa sulod sa lawas. So again, these are your white blood cells sa sulod sa imong microscope. These are your basophils. These are your lymphocytes nimo. Lymphocytes. So on and so forth. Aring lymphocytes, basophils ni sila. Hindi mo nyo pagtandaan ha. Good to know lang gid sila kids para matauhan lang. Hindi matauhan. Para ma-learn nyo lang. And lastly kids, you have your thrombocytes. Your thrombocytes naman or platelets are tiny fragments of cells without the nucleus. They are involved in blood clotting and coagulation. So again, baka mo they are involved in blood clotting and coagulation. Kids, ang platelets natin, amon sila kapaayo if we have open wounds. Baka open wounds, pilas. Kids, kung hinubuin nyo platelets or your thrombocytes, dugay maayo inyo pilas. So, ang purpose in your platelets, they are involved in your blood clotting and coagulation. When a blood vessel is damaged, collagen fibers are exposed. This stimulates the platelets to adhere and get sticky and form your platelet plug. Again, no, tanawa, they form your platelet plug. Meaning, kung may pilas ka mong dasig sa bayan, taas yung number of platelets. Kung taas yung number of platelets, therefore, you are healthy. Ang inyo kids na normal values ng platelet, it is from 150 to 450. Wala siyang healthy value sa inyo platelet. But, mga bakong sa kids dapat tani, hopefully, kay bata pa man ka mo, dapat tani mga above 300 siya kung magpa-check ka mo sa complete blood count sa inyo. Ha? The platelets and the injuries, kung may injuries ka mo, your platelet release many clotting factors, most of which are produced in the liver. Where are your platelets produced? In the liver. The clotting factor converts prothrombin to thrombin in the presence of calcium. Thrombin, in turn, acts as an enzyme which converts your fibrinogen into fibrin threads. The latter will wind around the platelet plug and entangle your RBCs, forming a clot para mag-close ang imo wound kang hindi na magtulo ang aton RBCs. The steps in clotting are many, and these are summarized below. Your platelets activate your prothrombin factor. Your prothrombin is converted into thrombin with calcium. Kung may calcium, ma-convert na yung prothrombin into thrombin, and your fibrinogen into fibrin, therefore closing a wound. Amo man lang siya kids ang iyang step. No need to memorize ha. Basta mo na ang iyang factor. So ano pala tandaan natin sa blood? Again, your blood is comprised of four kids nga parts. Your blood is composed of your plasma, your thrombocytes or your platelets, your erythrocytes or your RBCs, and your leukocytes, which is your white blood cells. Purpose ni plasma, diri na kasulod si nutrients natin, si gases, hormone, and waste materials natin. Diri kay plasma. Kay erythrocytes naman kids, ang purpose ni erythrocyte or our red blood cells, transfer of oxygen. Lifespan ni red blood cells natin is 120 days. Doon ginaguba ang aton na red blood cells sa spleen and liver. And kids, ang aton nga erythrocytes, doon naman gina-produce sa bone marrow. Okay? Next, you have your leukocytes, kids. Responsible for protecting you from bacteria and other foreign substances. It plays a major role in your immune system, leukocytes tani or your white blood cells, and your platelets or thrombocytes naman kids. Magpaayos ang pilas through its clotting factors, and it forms a platelet plug para mag-clot ang imong dugo kag hindi na mag-open ang imong wound. So that is the palatandaan ng kids sa blood. So that will be all for our module 6, gas exchange and circulation. Thank you for your time kids and have a good day.